Thank you to everyone and Happy New Year all. I'm going to be your main host for tonight. I'm Dr. T. Ayodele Ajay, and co-hosting with me are a number of the Tripart Care crew. We've got Dr. Dorcas, we've got Demi, who are all co-hosting and going to be in the background, making sure that everything runs smoothly. And it's just one of the greatest assets about Tripart Care is really the quality of the people who volunteer and work with us, the passion they bring in, and just the excitement they bring into the work as well. So I'm ever so grateful that we have people who are in the background to really keep the work going and do all the paddling. So when you see so much, sometimes people go out to speak and take on speaking engagements, prepare content, all the wonderful things that are done in the background. So it's really exciting to work with a team that are so motivated and so really passionate, but also very creative. So I'm really excited about 2025. 2025 is going to be our best year yet. I really have that in my heart, and I'm really very excited about that. And I think one of the reasons why we are starting with mindsets is because we looked at things and I mean, one of the ways to really, sometimes one of the ways to make things happen is to look at the past, see what has happened, what you've done in the past to make things happen, but also see what you've not done or what you failed to do, what has worked in the past and what has not worked in the past. And when I was reflecting on that, one of the things that stand out is that really mindset is a very, very key thing. Mindset can make the most pleasant experience, can turn it into the most difficult experience. Yet mindset can also make the most difficult experience to be a pleasant one. It's all in the mind. And I'm sure that um, for those of us who are so inclined, for those of us who have a Christian faith, we know that that's really very highly scriptural about the fact that really the way we think determines the way our life pans out. So, for those who are just joining us, welcome to January 2025, the maiden edition, the first edition of the Tripart Care Emotional Wellbeing Hub for 2025. And we are starting really right. We are starting with the basics. We are starting with the foundation, Mindset Makeover. Um, and just, I think I briefly introduced myself earlier. I'm going to say a bit more about myself and about Tripart Care. So tonight we are going to be talking about mindset makeover, but importantly, I would like to welcome everyone and also to tell you about the Tripart Care Emotional Wellbeing Hub. It's an online, safe, sensitive space where we discuss mental health, looking at it with the lens of spirituality, looking at it with the lens of our Christian faith, but also looking at it with the lens of science, importantly, but also being culturally relevant. Many times I come across people who because of their cultural background or because of their spiritual background, have a very difficult relationship with mental services or with mental health as a whole. People feel that there's an hidden agenda. So Tripart Care is really here to fill a gap. We have seen that there is a gap there when when you find the interplay or the intersectionality between faith and spirituality and mental health and culture, particularly culture when we look at ethnic minority in terms of people from Black ethnic minority backgrounds, Afro-Caribbean backgrounds, it can be a difficult mix. And so what Tripart Care does is to try and look at it from that view lens and to provide information, support, consultancy, knowledge as well in a way that people can relate to, that we can all benefit from. So that's what we are doing today. And that's what Tripart Care is about. Also, I would like to encourage everyone to please keep themselves muted except you need to speak. And also, we do have a Tripart Care. We have two Tripart Care YouTube, Tripart Care WhatsApp groups. There's one that is specifically for leaders, people who lead churches, people who lead, who are in leadership in corporate organizations, in charities, in careers, people who just feel that they not only need to take care of their own mental and emotional well-being, but they also have responsibility to take care of the emotional well-being of other people. It's a leadership group, and the content that we discuss there is different from the content that we discuss on the second group, which is a generic group. So at the end of this meeting, I'll be featuring the QR code for each of those groups. So just feel free to join, which just take a photo of it, and then we will be able to accept you onto the group. So please feel free to join those groups as well. We really have very good content that we share on those groups. We have conversations, we share resources, and quite a lot of things that can help to help us not only to remain emotionally balanced and well, but also to help us in our leadership roles for those in the leadership group. So there's quite a lot that happens on those groups. And then just to look at 2025 at a glance, we are going to very shortly look at what Tripad Care has got planned for 2025. But just to quickly say that that I'm a consultant psychiatrist. I work in the NHS in the UK, and also I do sit on the pastoral team in my church with a brief for the youth church for mental health, and also a number of our community projects, our Christmas Hamper project, for instance. And also I do have a very large public mental health profile in terms of having been featured in some of the UK Department of Health, Office of Health Improvement and Disparity campaign on mental health, particularly targeting the Black and ethnic minority background population. I've also been featured on several BBC interviews, and I've been doing this since 2003. So it's a little over 20 years now. And in public service, I sit on a number of charities and boards, and also run another project called the Mentor into Medicine program, which is to support young people from Black ethnic minority backgrounds to be able to secure medical school opportunities in the UK. And the publications, a number of us know already about the publications. I write in Testify, the archives of Testify magazine, which used to be a newspaper. I write quite a lot for them, or wrote for them in the past. And currently I continue to write as a columnist for Keep the Faith magazine. And I'm also an author of Footprints of Giants, and there are more books on the way. Right. So what's the future for 2025? I'm trying to rush through all of this so that we can get to the real content. So we are going to have two events in this January. The reason is because this mindset event was actually one that was deferred from December. So it's actually the December one that has been deferred till January now, because December was quite busy. People were already winding down for Christmas, and we thought we'll just put it in January, very early in January, where it's going to be most suitable anyway because of the theme. And then we are then going to, on the 30th of January, we are going to run another Tripad Hub. It's called Neuroscience of Habits. So when you fix your mindset, the next thing to fix is your habits. And that's going to look at the science, the scriptures of it, the practicalities of it. So that's one not to miss. Tripad Care Emotional Wellbeing Hub meets every last Thursday of the month. Like I said, this New Year edition is really a peculiar one. It's a unique one to serve the purpose of, because we didn't have one December last year. So, and those are the things that are on the offer. We're going to look at assertiveness and aggression is it assertiveness or is it aggression? Sometimes people don't know what's the difference and how to really be assertive without coming across as aggressive. In March, we are going to look at brain power, neuroplasticity. We are going to talk about a bit about neuroplasticity today anyway. But how do you take care of your brain? Because mental health is, at the end of the day, brain health. That's probably one of the very important things that I'm saying, that I'm going to say today already, that mental health boils down to brain health. Mental health is really brain health at the end of the day. So the way we take care of our brain, when we take care of our brain well, then it serves our mental health well, it serves our emotional well-being well. That's why when we've had poor sleep, just basics, when we've had poor sleep, we become really very irritable. We might begin to act out of ordinary because of poor sleep. And that's just a simple thing. So taking care of our brain is really about taking care of our mental health. And then we are then going to look at dementia, I wouldn't be doing the demential talk. I'll be getting a colleague in old age who is an older adult psychiatrist to do the demential talk. So I'm looking forward to that in April. And then we are then going to go on to May, faith and mental health. Does faith really count? What has spiritual things got to do with mental health? Because there's quite a lot that is now coming out in terms of research where science is siding with scriptures and saying that actually there's faith is good for mental well-being. And then we are going to look at in emotional intelligence is what we are going to look at in June and in July, self-confidence and self-esteem. And then there are special programs on the horizon as well. It's been long coming. It's been on the table for a long time, but now I'm happy that come June 2025, the first 3 Thursdays in June, 5th, 12th, and 19th of June, we are going to have an emotional intelligence course for engaged and newly married Christian couples. It's really ring-fenced for that group because we're beginning to see that quite a number of young people who get married or who are planning to get married can express some quite challenges, and some of them have to do with things that have happened in the past, the baggages that they have brought into the relationship that have not been addressed. So that's going to be addressing that, and that's something I'm really looking forward to. In the past, we've run I mean, over the years, my wife and I have, for instance, run sessions for couples who are intending couples or who have been newly married, but this is now going to be really formalized. We are going to have a formal course on that. And then also the church and charity leaders mental training series. We started that in 2023, and that's going to continue in this year. And that's going to be in September. We're hoping to run 2 of them over the course of the year. One of them will be in September, and it's going to be on one Saturday in September. That's going to be announced. And our Tripod Care Mind Gym course is a 4-week course for 18 to 40-year-olds, which usually runs in June. But because of the emotional well-being course, that's not going to be in June. But the dates for those will be announced. Is a 4-week course and it's usually honing in on the issues that young people encounter, particularly to do with their mental well-being and how to navigate those. It comes highly recommended, very interactive, 4 Thursdays in a row, and it's usually good fun. And of course, our book club continues to. Our book club is going to be resuscitated. We started it last year. We looked at Kobe Campbell's book, Why Am I Like This? Dealing with Trauma and how to recover. And there are a number of books that have been recommended. Dr. Dorcas is the one who is moving forward things on the book club, and she's doing an excellent job. So that's another thing that you should look out for in the coming months. So just to say, it's always good to offer a disclaimer, and that's not because we want to make things, want to embarrass anyone or make things difficult. It's just that we want to make it clear that this event is for public mental health education purposes only. It's not a personal consultation by any means, and it's not meant to address anyone's personal mental difficulties or emotional problems in any way, and it's not therapy. It's just for general information provision, and that means that if anyone wants to take decisions regarding their mental health or regarding their emotional well-being, it's very important that you please consult with your main mental health or emotional well-being service provider. It could be your psychiatrist, your psychologist, your counselor, your therapist, or your psychiatric nurse, whoever takes, or even your general practitioner or your family physician. Right, so let's start now. We are getting into the nitty-gritty of things. This is one of the slides I like the most, and that's because it just sort of sums up the essence of all these events that we do, we run. It's really about change. And change because particularly today's event, basics of today's event is really about mindset makeover. It means that it's going to entail some change. And a lot of people have done, there's quite a lot of psychological studies and lots of research that's been done about change. And some of the things that emerge is that, one, that the quicker you act on what you know you need to change, the more likely you are going to effect that change. So I encourage you today that please take notes. One of the other things that is important is that taking notes is very important. Please take notes, share your notes, but also ask for support. But importantly, please try and begin to act on things very quickly. Give yourself, think about the 24-hour timeline, think about the 1 week timeline, 3-day timeline, 1 month timeline, 2 week timeline, and 3 months timeline, and get some accountability. There is research showing that when somebody has 1 or 2 people in their lives who holds them accountable. I mean, a case in point, today I received a text from somebody abroad, actually, a very dear person in my very close network. They sent me a text and say, bro, you committed to the fact that you are going to work on this project. When is this project going live? And that at that point, it had been on my mind that there was a project that had been relegated last year but needed to move up. And that was a prompt. So I committed to a date because it was already on my mind anyway. And the person said, oh, yes, that's good. We are working on that date. So I now know that there's somebody who's holding me accountable. And that means that that's going to be part of my motivation to actually make sure that I deliver, because I know there's somebody who is a few thousand miles away who are expecting that this project is going to be delivered. So, those things we do know, accountability is a very important thing. And like I said, it's also about assessing progress, assessing your progress as you go along. So, what is a mindset? What is mindset? I want to start by looking at mindset in this way. And this is what a very prominent 20th century business philosopher, Zig Ziglar, some of us have his book. The most prominent one is See You at the Top by Zig Ziglar. And he left a lot of legacy. Texan man, lived his life just shaping the way we see life, and really it's still got a foundation that's still going on. He said, you are what you are, and you are where you are because of what has gone into your mind. You change what you are, and you change where you are by changing what goes into your mind. So there's no other simple way to say it. Basically, that where we are now is as a product of our thinking, and the way to change where we are now and what we are now is change where we are, what we think. And that sits so well. One of the reasons why I really like the Mindset Makeover today is because it's science siding with scriptures. We do know, for instance, that scriptures talk about the fact that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And there's also the scripture in I think it's Proverbs 4 that says that guard your heart with all diligence. Guard your heart. In fact, one of them says, above all that you keep your heart, keep your mind, keep the way you think, because your life flows from it. So the outcome of our lives is really, and science is now backing that up very strongly, that actually the outcome of our lives is really about the way we think. So Zig Ziglar really got that right. He nailed it right on the head when he said the things that he said in terms of the fact that our mindset really determines where we are now, and also our mindset talks about is also a reflection of what we've been feeding our minds. So in terms of scientific terms, what does mindset really mean? It's actually a state of viewing the world. It's the way we habitually view the world, view ourselves, and view others. For instance, there are people who feel that I'm unlovable. There are people who feel that the world is stacked against them. And these are realities of life. And it's not their fault. It's not because it's not about naming or shaming people. It's not about making people feel bad about their current mental mindset. It's really about helping us to see every one of us can improve the way we think about life. Every one of us can improve the way we think about the future, about the way we think about ourselves, about the way we think about the people in our lives. We can all improve that. It's an ever increasing and ever ever progressive process. So our mindset is a state of viewing the world. It's a state of viewing the world, ourselves, others, and it's set from past experiences, education, exposure, emotional moments. So people don't just develop a negative mindset, for instance. A child doesn't grow up and think, oh, the world is against them, or that if anything is going to go wrong, it always goes wrong with them, or that, or if everything good is happening, when it gets to their turn, it skips it. That's not something that it's because there have been life experiences, there's been exposures, there's been education, maybe even somebody who's fed them something wrong, that has caused them to be like that. Recently, on my drive to work yesterday, I was just reflecting on my career journey, and I was reflecting at a point in my life when it looked like there was a bit of a detour. And I thought to myself, and I just muttered it out of my mouth. I said, "Oh wow, the career advice I received at that time was so wrong." I just found myself saying it. And that meant that at that point, the career advice I received was so wrong, and it shaped the way my career, the trajectory of my career for a while. Because at that point, it had become a mindset. I'd believed it, I'd swallowed it, and I began to act in that regard. So basically, a mindset is shaped also by the things that we hear, by the things that we've experienced, but it's because we think about it over and over again that it then sets itself. Like I said, initially it's like putting water in a cup and putting it in the fridge. Or in the fridge, it's never going to do anything, it's never going to solidify. But if you put it in the freezer and you put it long enough, then you begin to get ice. And that ice is going to take the shape of the container. So if you put it in a square cup, your ice is going to come out square. If you put it in a round cup, you can't get a square piece of ice. And that's the way it is. And that's a very simple illustration, but it drives home that important point. So mindset is a person's set of beliefs, attitudes, and expectations, and it shapes how they think, feel, and behave. I think there's been a lot that's been said already in the comments about that. About some people have talked about feelings. I've also read about identity, because really that's what our mindset can really shape that. Our mindset can really determine how we think, how we feel, and how we behave. And of course, if we think, feel, and behave for long enough, it becomes a habit. And if we behave well long enough from the habit, it begins to write our legacy, it begins to write our life, it begins to write even our generational story. That's why people talk about generational wealth, people talk about generational poverty. Those are things that are passed on from through mindsets. Through mindsets, there are things that are passed on from one generation to the other. So the other thing about mindset, I said earlier that mindset is really made of two words. It's really mind and set, and it's the way that our mind has been set as a result of thinking in a particular fashion or style over and over again over weeks, months, and years. So the mindset is how one has programmed. I think the key phrase there, the key word in that place is program. It's programming. It's like some people maybe we've got, for instance, my younger daughter Arolua is she's a cyber security student, so she knows about all these programming things. And it's the program, is the thing that you write. It's the way you write programs that they come out. I'm not a techno, I'm not a techno guru, but I know the basics, that it's the way you write programs that they then come out. And if you need to change what you are saying in terms of the hardware, you need to if you need to you need to go back to the program and rewrite it. So, and maybe some of us are going to find out as we look at different mindsets. Maybe I'm hoping that every one of us can see something that we really need to shift or change or challenge in our mindset. And the thing is that it also affects the way um, we then interpret life situations. Because the reality is that, I mean, let's just look at this. Can you? I'm sure that everyone can see the scenery on the left side. I'm just interested in what if you were to describe this scenery, what would you say about it? What words would you use to describe this scenery? What leaps out to you? What stands out to you? And we can put that in the chat as well. Okay. Okay, peaceful. I like that. Tranquility. Good. Beautiful. Yeah. Serenity. Good. Cool. Yeah. Color. Yeah. Okay. Color. Yeah. I like that. Serenity. Okay. Right. Brilliant. Let's keep them coming. Stunning views. Yeah. Calm and creativity. Good. Brilliant. Colorful. I like all the mindset that are represented in this room. You know why? Because somebody else could have looked at this and said, "Oh, wow, it's about to rain." And when I say that, I usually joke about an experience I had years ago. I think this was 2005. Um, so I went for my driving test. It was very, very important that I passed my driving test at the time because it was like it was overdue and we were expecting a second child. I just needed to get this driving test out of the way. And then we go on the driving test, we go around the routes and everything. It looks like it's all going well. And then we get to a particular point. I'm about to cross, there's a zebra crossing, and we're about to get back to the driving test station. So I'm like, oh, it looks like everything has been going right. Let's just get this done with and let me just go back so that I'm just keen that I don't make any mistakes now. And so there was a zebra crossing, and somebody was going to cross. So I stopped for them to cross. And as soon as they crossed, and they were barely at the other end of the zebra crossing, when I just put my legs on the pedal and drove off. And as soon as we drove off, the the driving person, the examiner, looks up at the sky and says, "Oh, it looks like it's about to rain." As soon as I hear that, my mindset, which is already in a like very anxious and jumbled and just really hoping I pass this, I look at him and say, "Oh, by the way, are you trying to give me a Veils message? Are you trying to tell me that it's going to rain very soon? Are you giving me a coded message to let me know that when it rains, obviously people don't like it when it rains, at least in this part of the world? Are you trying to tell me that there are tears and the world, something like that?" And he says, "Oh, no, no, no. I really mean it that it looks like it's about to rain." I said that to just go back to the point in terms of somebody would have looked at this scenery and they would have said, "Oh, it looks like it's about to rain." But what we can see is the color, is the beauty, is the expanse, is the largeness, is the vastness, is the limitlessness. And that's what mindset is about. The same two people can look at the same situation and they have entirely opposite poles of interpretation to it. It's not about the situation, it's about their mindset. And I think it's important to say that again, that two different people can look at the same situation. Nothing is different about that situation. Everything is the same, but they have exactly opposite poles of interpretation to it based on their mindset. Because our mindset is like a template, is what interprets what we see in life. And there are different mindsets that people have. There's the optimistic mindset. That's people who are optimists. They are incurable optimists. They see the best out of every situation. Even when things are going wrong, they can see that this is going to work out well. And that's also sounding with scriptures, that all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. So, but there are people who they see the worst and they see the most negative situation out of everything that is flawless. And it's not their fault by any means. It's actually because there have been things that have happened in the past that have actually caused to cause them to be like that. But the good thing is that we are not stuck with our mindsets. So there's the optimistic and pessimistic mindset. Pessimistic mindsets are people who they see danger, they see evil, they see disaster in the most beautiful and colorful situation. Fixed mindset and growth mindset. The person who has done about the most research on mindset is a professor of psychology, Carol Dweck. She's also written a book which I'm going to reference very soon. I think it's called Mindset, the new psychology of success, which I'm going to reference in a short while. But fixed mindset says that nothing, that I'm the way I am now. Maybe there are people who are listening to me and thinking, oh, let him just continue to rap what he's rapping. I'm not going to change my mindset anyway. Maybe you've got a fixed mindset. Fixed mindset is about the fact that my intelligence is fixed. Um, my knowledge is fixed. I'm not going to change, because it's something that has been endowed on me anyway, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's very disempowering. So people who have a fixed mindset then don't tend to take on new challenges. They don't tend to go out of their comfort zone. They don't tend to take on anything that is going to make them feel that they're incompetent, or they have to learn something new because they feel that they are not able to learn anything. So that's the fixed mindset. But there's also a growth mindset, which is the opposite. The growth mindset sees, even when they fail in a situation, they see it as a learning opportunity. So they don't see it as the fact that they failed. They see it as the fact that they've learned one way that these things don't work. And they embrace feedback. They are open to new opportunities. And because of that, they tend to be more successful in life. There is research, vast research, showing that our mindset determines all our outcomes in life, from physical health to mental health to even money mindset, to wealth, to financial progress, to career. Everything is influenced by the way we think, which is quite also supporting scriptures. So that's the growth and fixed mindset. And there's quite a lot of research that's been done on that. Our book on growth, the mindset comes highly recommended. There's also people who see scarcity in everything. There's a scarcity and abundance mindset. That's probably, if somebody's grown up with scarcity, if somebody's grown up sometimes with poverty, in a very poor situation, sometimes it can affect, even when that person gets into wealth, they still think poor. I was speaking at a church, actually precisely the Tab Church in Lucia, a few months ago. And the pastor of the church was making a very poignant illustration, actually. He was talking about the fact that there are people who are wealthy, but they still think poor. And he was citing an illustration about something, that a real life example, where somebody had visited their relative who was living in a mansion that they had paid for, that they were really well off. And this person, this visiting relative, was in the bathroom, was in the shower room, when suddenly the lights go off. And then they say, oh, what's happened? There's a power failure. It turns out that there wasn't actually a power failure. It turns out that the host of the home was the person who had turned their power to be programmed that way, because they had grown up in poverty. So even though they were still living in wealth, they were still living in a fear that things were going to go wrong and they were going to be poor. And so the way they lived their life did not exhibit that they were in any way wealthy, because in their minds, they were still on the brink. They were still on the edge, thinking, and sometimes sometimes things can be like that. Sometimes there are people who have such experiences where, even though there's abundance, they think scarcity. And just to think about scarcity and abundance, so scarcity mindset is somebody who thinks the world is a tough place and there's not enough to go around. But the reality is that people who think abundance actually believe that their needs will always be met and there's enough to go around for everyone. And because of that, they don't get into competition, because the scarcity mindset is also one that pushes people into competition, because they think they are competing with other people for scarce resources. Now, talking about abundance mindset, recently I also had another experience. I tried to make these things very real. I had another experience which was really very interesting in shaping my mindset even more about abundance. Um, I I spoke for Jaguar Land Rover, and one of the things that they do in order to sort of say thank you to their speakers. We were about 3 or 4 people who had spoken at their Afro-Caribbean Heritage Day. This was in sometime just before the Black History Month. So they took us out. They took us out on what they call the JLR experience. It's basically that they want to show us the capacity and how rugged their cars are. So they took us out in a Land Rover, and literally where they took us to, I didn't really believe that those places existed in the UK, because it was like being back in the jungle in Africa or in India. It was like, really, if you were here dropped there, you wouldn't have believed that you are in a developed nation. It was really like in the thick of. Anyway, they kept taking us. We were going out, and the car was going through all the different terrains, and suddenly we began to pass a row of cars. It was like a car park full of cars, and all of them were camouflaged cars. And this was all within the JLR. So they've got vast expanse of land, vast. It's almost like an estate. So I ask and say, oh, all these cars that are camouflaged, why are they camouflaged? Why are they like that? And then our driver said, oh, yes, the reason is because those are the models of Range Rover, Jaguar that are going to come out in the next 2, 3, 4 years. And the reason why we paint them like that is so that even if anyone sees them, they wouldn't be able to tell what model they've seen, so that they don't change their mind. So it's their way of protecting their intellectual property, more or less. Anyway, but that was not the point. The point was that this person then goes on to tell us that, by the way, all these cars that you see, these are million pounds worth of cars, that all of them, none of them is going to make it out of here alive. They are all going to be destroyed. That when JLR put their cars to test like that, it never makes it to the road. And of course, everyone in the car had that jaw. It was jaw dropping, because we were like, oh, what? Do you mean that all of these cars and all of them are going to be destroyed? They are not going to be given, they are not going to be sold out, they are not going to be sold cheap, they are not going to be given out to anyone, they are not going to be sent to places where people would be too glad to have them. They are all going to be destroyed. And it was like a wake-up call for me. And I thought, oh my God, can you imagine that? And there are people who are struggling to finance the project that they've got on their minds. So the reality is that there is abundance, but it depends on the way we think. It depends on what we choose to think. And that shook my ethos. It really made me rethink about how my attitude towards projects, my attitude towards the things, because there is money somewhere. And of course, there's also people who think like victims. There's victim mentality. There's a positive and negative mindset, which is an overarching. Some people are half full or half empty thinkers. And of course, money mindset is what we've talked about. One of the things about money mindset is the fact that money, it's been told that there's research also showing that every one of us has a money threshold. We have a money threshold in our minds. And whenever our money balance goes well above that balance, because of the threshold in the mind will sabotage the process until the money threshold goes back to that level. And it can also be in the opposite, that when the money threshold is high, whenever the balance, the reality that we have in our balances go below that level, the mind automatically begins to work to bring it back to that level. But the good thing is that we can change those thresholds. And the other thing is that we also know, for instance, that research shows that I think about a third of people who win the lottery go back being more bankrupt than before they started, because there's a difference between winning the lottery and becoming a millionaire and being a millionaire in your mind. There's a difference between having $1 million in your bank balance and being a millionaire in your mind. And that's why I'm sure that some of us would have come across the Instagram post of Grant Cardone. Grant Cardone is a billionaire in America who there was a TV series done on him where he had been taken into a new place. He relocated cities, relocated to a new state. He changed his identity, sort of shaved his head, dressed in a different way to mask his identity completely. And they took away all the contacts that he had. They took away all the money that he had. And he said that within 3 months, I'm going to make all this money back. He wanted to prove a point about this mindset thing. And in reality, actually, in 3 months, he became more wealthy without his previous contacts, just with his mind, in a new state, in a new environment, because he wanted to prove that it's not about the money, it's about the mindset. It's about and of course, there's a leadership mindset. That's why sometimes when people go for interviews, for instance, they go for an interview for a director post, and they say the person, you didn't get the job because you think like a manager. I don't know whether people have had that sort of that you're not a strategic thinker, that you are an operational thinker. So there's also that about in terms of our leadership mindset can actually determine how many people we can lead and what sort of places we can take them to. It's all about the way we think. So there's a way leadership mindset is about visionary mindset. It's about projecting visions, but it's also about helping people to fulfill those visions by motivating them, supporting them, providing the tools, and empowering them and building them up. So all of those things are things that are very well known in research. So how does mindset affect our life outcomes? It affects health. All of this there's lots of research all showing all of this. It affects physical, mental health. People who have a terminal diagnosis, for instance, it's been known that people who have diagnosis of terminal illness, who have a diagnosis of a potentially terminal illness, who have a positive mindset towards that and have a positive outlook and expect to do well, actually do better, a lot better, remarkably better than people whose illnesses are not as damaged or are not as poor in prognosis, but they believe that it's going to take them out. So the mind-body relationship is a very strong one. It also affects the way we cope with stress. It affects the way we deal with life's challenges, success, finance, relationships, all of those. So can mindset be changed? And I'm quite keen to hear from you. What do we think about, can mindsets be changed? Let's see. Okay, I'm glad that we think it can. Yes, yes, yes. We think it can, and it's true that it can. In fact, the reality is that constantly our brains are changing. Constantly our brains are changing. Yes, we got to. I like the fact that somebody said yes, if we are willing, because it takes work. Our brains mindset will not automatically change. We've got to be if it's automatically changing, it's probably not changing in the right direction. So it takes effort to change our mindsets with proper education and willingness. Absolutely. Intentional effort. Absolutely. And the secret to that, the scientific basis to that is actually what's called neuroplasticity. And two words again, neuron or neuro in terms of the brain, and plasticity in terms of being plastic. Plastic, we can fold plastic, we can bend plastic, but we can't bend metal, we can't bend wood. And we used to believe, many years ago, we used to believe that the brain was not malleable, that the brain was not bendable, that the brain was not plastic. In fact, we used to believe then that when after a certain age, the brain doesn't manufacture new cells. But we now know that that's not correct. We now know that people have recovered from traumatic brain injury in remarkable ways that can only show that the brain continues to make new cells. And the brain does that in three ways. One of them is that it makes new cells just off the cuff. One of the things that helps neuroplasticity, that helps in terms of also changing the way the mind works, is exercise. Exercise is actually supportive of neurogenesis. Neurogenesis meaning making new nerve cells. So one of the reasons why exercise is good for mental well-being is because it supports new cells being made in the brain. But in addition to that, apart from new cells being made, it's also about the connection between the cells. By the way, this photo is simply psychology, that they got the photo credit of it, and it's actually showing a nerve cell and the connection between other nerve cells. So all this is the trunk of the nerve cell, or what's called the axon, and these are the dendrites. These are the possible connections it's making with other cells. And so the stronger these connections are, the quicker the message the brain transmits between itself. And then the third way that it does that, the third way that the brain also helps with with which makes the brain able to change, is that there are white coverings, there are sheets of white matter that cover these areas of the dendrites, or the tentacles of these nerve cells. And the more white cells, the more white covering they have, the quicker. It's almost like it speeds the message. And so those are the three ways that the brain sorts of rejuvenates itself and makes and changes. And the good thing is that things like exercise, things like the thing we constantly put our minds to, can actually help the brain in rewiring and making and strengthening certain connections why it weakens certain connections. The basis of neuroplasticity and the basis in which mindset works and mindset changes work is this: that is, either use it when you use, the more you use a particular pathway, the stronger it becomes. The less you use it, the weaker it becomes. So one of the ways to change a mindset that we don't want is to starve it. Is not to continue to ruminate on that hurt, not to continue to ruminate on that trauma, not to continue to relive it and expand it and think about it and sort of meditate on it, and all of those things are festering it. It's becoming stronger. The other way to do it is to change the mindset completely and begin to think about it, to occupy our minds with something else. So at this point, I'm just going to show a quick video, really a nice video that actually sort of illustrates this really very much. And I'm just going to stop sharing, and we will change. Okay, confirm. Good. Let's just be sure that we've got the volume. Share sound good. Brilliant. Share. Okay, and then please do let me know, either indicating by thumbs up or just typing in the chat to make sure that both the audio and the video is being shown. Please, that you can see the audio. Sorry, you can see the video and you can hear the audio. So we're just going to start it now.
Our thoughts, feelings, and behaviours continually affect each other, and it's easy to develop negative patterns where unhelpful thoughts lead to unhelpful feelings and actions. Sometimes this can become a vicious cycle. Many of us don't realise that we can influence this process and that this can improve our mental health. The best way to deal with these unhelpful thoughts is to recognise them, challenge them, and see if you can replace them. Some people call this the catch it, check it, change it approach. With practice, this can help us look at perceived problems from a different perspective. For example, you might be worried about an important task you have to do at work, convinced it will go wrong and everyone will think you're a failure. Rather than immediately accepting this thought and feeling even worse, take a moment to catch it and check it. Ask yourself whether there's good evidence for it, or if there are other explanations. Try thinking about what you would say to a friend who was thinking this way. Finally, see if you can change the thought for a more positive one. Maybe, I'm prepared, I've put a lot of work in, and I'm going to do my best. Sometimes you will be able to change the thought to a positive one, but don't worry when at other times you can't. There are no right or wrong answers. It's about learning to think more flexibly and be more in control. By catching the thought, checking it, and seeing if you can change it, with practice, you can help break the negative cycle.
Right. Good. I wonder what our thoughts are on that. I can see that there have been a few comments already. What did we make of that? Any comments, any thoughts, does anything resonate? Is there anything we disagree with? Okay. Okay, Princess Polaji says very encouraging. Change is possible. Absolutely. This is so true. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yes, that's precise. That's the basics of CBT. This video is what sums up it's CBT in a nutshell. Obviously, it's a lot more, but that's the foundational concept of CBT. Yeah, you can change. Yeah, I like that. Somebody's going scriptures. Yeah, that's part of my notes actually. Second Corinthians 10:5. Yeah, I think that says, "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal; they are mighty through God to the pulling down strongholds, casting down imaginations." Yeah. Thoughts are powerful. Oh, I think people are is dropping on my notes here. Thoughts are powerful and control our feelings and behavior. Absolutely. Yeah. I think there are people who are is dropping on my notes. Yes, indeed. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. So that's and the reality is that these things work. You know, I wrote a post on LinkedIn today, and I was saying that was it LinkedIn? Anyway, one of the posts I wrote today was about the fact that some of the things we are going to share today are things that I have used in my life, and I know they work. So it's not something I read in a book. It's something that after I've read them, I've put them to work in my life and I know that they work. And I've recommended them to other people and I know that it works. I think Kenny, my twin brother, nicely put up a post on LinkedIn as well today saying that same thing. Thank you, Kenny, for that post. So basically, they do work. Um, it takes work, but they work. I think that's a good way to put it. It takes work, but they work. The reality is that we can, no matter how maybe this has shown you some areas where you really need to work on your mindset. Let it be an encouragement rather than a discouragement, because the reality is that thoughts can change, thoughts can be changed. We're not stuck with the thoughts that we have currently. If they are not serving us, we can change them. It's almost like you are allowed to return thoughts back and ask for a replacement. I'm sure that some of us will probably have returned some of the unwanted Christmas gifts that we got, or uh, this over Christmas. So in the same way, we can do that. And talking about the fact that it works, so this photo and photo credit to Femi Olayinka. Thank you, uh, Femi Oyetunde, thank you for that photo. I'm not sure whether you in fact remember that you and Abo were the ones that took this photo. You probably don't, or you may not. You may or you may not. But this photo was taken 5 years ago now, 6 years ago, before the lockdown, and it was taken for a day like this. At the time, I knew that there was going to be a time when I was going to be running a mental emotional well-being courses like this, well before the lockdown, June 2019. Nobody had any inkling about the lockdown. I'd spoken at an event at one of our church events, at a couples event on, I think it was on emotional intelligence in marriage or something like that. And at the end of the event, I just thought, I'm going to do something really very prophetic and strategic. I dressed up, I asked that the photo be taken with myself looking like I was teaching a class. And I remember that the people in the hall were asking me, what's this photo all about? And I said, the photo is about the fact that I'm going to be teaching courses soon. At the time, there was no concept, there was no content, there was no classroom, but the thought was there. And that's manifested. Um, over the last 5 years, it's manifested, it's shown itself, it's become life, it's become real. And that's when I saw this photo in the archives today, I thought, oh, what better photo to show? Um, so like we've been saying, our thinking controls our life. Toxic thoughts are toxic. Now there's research showing that when you think toxic thoughts, resentment, anger, jealousy, strife, that the brain actually feels the impact, and that at the DNA level, at the cellular DNA level, the DNA cringes. They verify our chromosomes actually cringe. and that it's toxic to them, they can become damaged as a result. And eventually, subsequently, they can become, that can lead to illness. So toxic thoughts are actually toxic to our bodies. Toxic thoughts are toxic to our bodies. And you can master your thinking. And it takes time, but you can change your thinking. So we think on three different levels. There's a conscious level, and interestingly, can anyone guess what percentage of I think it's already on the slides anyway, but just as a guess, what percentage of our thinking do we think is conscious? Okay, let's see. Okay, yeah, yes, I agree. 10%. Okay, good guess, Pastor Chidu. 80%. Oh, wow, that's very generous. That's really generous. Okay. Yes, thank you for all those attempts. It's actually about 1 to 2% of our thoughts that are conscious. All the other 99 to 98 to 99% of our thoughts are at the subconscious level. That's alarming. It can be empowering, but it's also it's a wake-up call, isn't it? That a lot of the things that we are thinking, we are not even conscious of. A lot of our thinking takes place without our thinking about it. I usually illustrate that when I ask people what they ask for breakfast or for dinner or for lunch, they would tell me, some people will even tell you the spice that they used in the food and the flavoring that came with it and how many minutes it took them to prepare it. When I then ask a similar question in terms of what we are putting in our minds, what were you thinking about when you were driving from work to home today, or when you were driving to work this morning? Then it becomes a challenge because we are never conscious. We never think about what we are thinking, yet what we are thinking is running our lives. So we think on three different levels: automatic, so conscious level, which is the most superficial, yet is the most minute. But we also have automatic automatic negative, or positive or neutral thoughts. Those are the stream of thoughts that are constantly going on. They're just constantly going on in our minds. They're just constantly going on, and we are not catching them. It's almost like a leaf is flowing over the river, and we are not even noticing that it's going. They can be negative, they can be positive, and they can be neutral. When they are positive, they help life outcomes in a positive direction. When they are negative, they also go in that direction. But there's also core beliefs. There are people who believe that they are unlovable. There are people who believe that if things are going to go wrong, it's going to be them. That when everything is going right, when it's their turn, it changes, or life is hard, all of those things. Or women, people who believe that people, for instance, are entering into marriage and they believe that, oh, women are after your money, or men cannot be trusted. All of those things, actually, it's almost like there are certain templates for those relationships. And if one does not correct those things, eventually the outcomes will play out like that. Or people who believe, there are people also, some of them is on ageism. People who believe that elderly people are just a burden, or people who believe that the Gen Zs and the younger generation are just technophobe, they are just into technology. All of those things, their mindsets, and whether we like it or not, when we carry those mindsets, we are projecting them onto the people in our lives, and people in our lives would then respond and play out exactly the thoughts that we are projecting and would believe towards them. Because thoughts are things, and thoughts are also spiritual. So, and thoughts occupy, our thinking changes the wiring of our brains. I've talked about the brain wiring earlier. But let's go on to this. What animals or objects can you see on this slide? What animals or objects can you see? So this duck and rabbit is actually a piece of the puzzle in this bigger picture. Does anyone disagree? Can you see that it's almost like a puzzle that's been put into that frame? I'm not hearing anything back.
It
Yeah.
looks more like a sticker.
Okay, yeah, or okay, maybe a sticker, but I interpret it as like a puzzle. It sits into its framework. But whether it's a sticker or whether it's a sticker, which it could be as well, And that's quite interesting that you say that. Thank you for saying that, actually, because it just shows us the many different interpretations to blank situations. So somebody saw a squirrel, somebody saw a dog, somebody saw a puzzle, somebody even saw a dove. The reality is that that's the way our thinking is. The situation presents itself, life presents itself, and it's the interpretation that we put to it that then shapes our thinking, shapes our feelings, and shapes our behavior. And it then results in habits, and it results in the way we respond, and it then determines outcomes. That's the point that this was meant to really illustrate. And so how do we I've talked about automatic thoughts, so we can leave that alone. I've talked about core beliefs, we can leave that alone. So what do we need to do? I'm going to wrap this up in 10 minutes. So what do we need to do? Awareness. Awareness is key. You see, you can't change a mindset or a thinking pattern that you're not aware of. Awareness is so key. You can't change an awareness, a thinking pattern that you're not aware of. Journaling, spiritual exercises like even meditation on scriptures, all of those things can actually help us to be more aware of our thinking patterns. And all of these are also scientific. There's quite a lot that's been written on journaling. There's quite a lot that's been written on meditation in terms of how it helps mental health and emotional well-being. So awareness is key, one. The other thing is that when we then have an awareness, we then need to begin to, one of the ways we can do that is by journaling and by the spiritual exercise I spoke about, but also assessment. These days, when I suddenly begin to feel angry, or I suddenly begin to feel sad, or I suddenly begin to feel excited, or I suddenly begin to feel happy, I try to retrace my feelings to the thought. What was the thought that generated that? You know, sometimes you are just driving down, you are driving to work, or you are driving from work or to a place, and you just suddenly feel an emotion. You might not even be aware of it. When we get that change in emotion, the best thing to do, particularly when it's not a favorable emotion, is to try and retrace your steps. It's like when you would misplace your key or you misplace an item and people say, "Where have you been today?" You try and retrace your step. In the same way, we need to be doing that in a cognitive way to retrace our steps and be able to match our thinking to our feelings and to the outcomes that we are getting. The other one is accountability. Years ago in our household, it used to be the case that we had a golden rule that if you say something that is contrary, if you say something that it doesn't align with what we all believing for, we'll usually say, "Is that what you really want to happen?" And as soon as you hear that, you know that people are calling you out. And anybody can call anyone out. The youngest person in the family can call the oldest person in the family out and say, "Actually, Daddy, what you just said does not align with what we are trusting for." And I would have to take it back. So do you have people who are in your life whom you hold yourself accountable to, that when you speak, because our thoughts betray our thoughts, our talk betray our thinking. So that's the other way to become more aware of your mindset. And then, of course, acknowledging for help. I've talked about the fact that thoughts, thinking is spiritual as well. So one of the things I do is actually pray that God helps me to be able to think the right things. But also sometimes you need professional help. There are people who have experienced trauma, who have experienced deeply entrenched trauma, who have had very severe adverse life experiences, and they need a professional to help them unpack those things. I've always said it and I've always believed it, and it's something that I practice. I really don't think that going for therapy, particularly when you get the right person, is contrary to faith. I don't think so. I think that they work together, and I think that there are people who really are in church, who are in faith organizations, who would do well with seeing a therapist or seeing a counselor, because that person is not only is a professional and they are trained to be able to help them untangle the complexities that they've encountered in their thinking processes. So the other time people are talking about how to about really the type of ways we can also begin to, when we now recognize that we have a mindset that is not serving us, what are the things that we can do? What are the things that we can do to help us? one of the things that we can do is to rationalize those thoughts. And people who've listened to me before know that one of my key phrases and one of my best, one of my strong phrases, or my favorite phrases, is what I call the Philippians 4:8 test. Philippians 4:8. That's going back to scriptures as well. Whatever things are true, whatever things are honest, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things of a good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. Basically saying that choose what you think about, choose what you think on. The fact that not so pleasant thing happened does not mean we should camp with it and begin to make it our main menu. We have it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If we do that, eventually it's going to become a mindset. It's going to become the way we shape the world. For instance, there are people who believe that there's no good in the world. There are people who believe that if something is going right, it's soon going to go wrong. There are people who believe, for instance, that nobody can ever go out of their way to do you good. So if, for instance, somebody offers them money, they think, what's the catch? They are always looking, and that's because evil has happened over and over and over and over again, and that's been internalized into their mindsets. But there are people who believe that it will always go right, it will always end in their favor, and it always pans out like that. So how can you rationalize mindsets that are toxic? What does the scripture say? That, like I've said, that what would my friends say if I told them about this? What are the other plausible, neutral, or positive explanations for this? I talked about my driving test, for instance, when I believed that when my driving tutor said, "Oh, it looks like it's going to rain," and I thought it was a field language, and the man was really being genuine. He was just really saying that he felt that it was going to rain soon. So it's really about examining our thoughts again. Are there bits of information that I'm not aware of? I mean, when we looked at the global picture, when we looked at the bigger picture, and we saw, oh, actually, this looks like a puzzle, or it looks like something that's like a sticker. In the worst case scenario, what's the worst case scenario? Sometimes one of the methods I use is this. I look at what's the worst case scenario, and I say, actually, I mean, and so what? If then, and so what? London Bridge isn't going to fall down because such and such. That's one way. The other way I do this is when I find out that my self-talk does not align with where I really want to be. If, for instance, I got something wrong, maybe I didn't reply to somebody's text, or I missed out on an email, or maybe I even missed something, maybe professionally, and the self-talk then comes in. Oh, you got that wrong again, this and that, and you know the way it is. I just step back and I say, hang on a minute, you can't talk to me like that. I'm a prince. It works. It works. It works. It works. I just step back and say, hang on a minute, you can't talk to me like that. I am a prince. And everything just aligns, because suddenly I bring myself to the fact that, yes, whether I make a mistake or not does not negate the fact that I'm a prince. I mean, it won't suddenly, your name will not change or your status does not change because you missed out on a particular thing. It's like a Rolls Royce that has a scratch, or a Rolls Royce that has a flat tire. That does not change the fact that the Rolls Royce is still a Rolls Royce. It may have a flat tire. What it needs is a different tire. It needs a replacement tire. It may have a scratch. What it needs is to take it to the body works and get that sorted. But it doesn't change the fact that it's a Rolls Royce, and anyone who knows. When they say Rolls Royce, they know one. And sometimes in our mindsets, we've got to carry ourselves like that. Yeah? Rolls Royce they have scratches. Rolls Royce have flat tires. Rolls Royce get into accidents, but it does not change the fact that they are Rolls Royces. So that works for me a lot. I just say, hang on a minute, you cannot talk to me like that. I am a prince. And that's one that really I like. Okay, yes. Thank you for sharing that acronym as well. Somebody's talked about truthful, helpful, inspiring, necessary, and kind. So what can I learn from this? That's the other thing. If things don't go particularly, if I've missed out on something, um, and that's something that's encouraged in the medical community, actually. Put up your hands, but also then say, what can I learn from this? We are still learning. Even the professors of medicine are still getting it wrong, and they're still putting up their hands and learning. So that approach does help. So the other thing is that sometimes I also say, actually, I speak out loud and say, I'm not actually going to think like that. That's toxic thinking. I'm not letting it fester. And by opening my mouth and saying it, I'm actually interrupting that thought process. And you can't think and talk together. Do you know that? You can't think and talk together. You either do one or the other. As soon as you start talking, the thing that prolonged thinking process is aborted. So that's also one of the other ways. And sometimes I just say, hang on a minute, hold it. Uh, yeah. So all those things, they are strategies, they are techniques, but they do work. And then sometimes I write things down, journaling, like I said. And sometimes I just say there's an embargo. I'm not thinking any of those thoughts now for the next day or for the next day, or that's a done deal. Yes, I missed out on that, or I didn't do that right, but that's not a done deal. I forgive myself, and I'm forgiven, and I'm not revisiting that issue. Okay, we are rounding up now, I believe. Okay, so how do you change your mindset, just as an overall, just summarizing all the things I've been saying? Practice metacognition. Metacognition is not a metaphysical word or a yoga word of any sort like that. Metacognition is a scientific word. It's the act of thinking about what we are thinking. Journaling, like I said earlier, scriptural meditation, reflection, they all help in terms of thinking what we are thinking. Challenging ants, they are called automatic negative thoughts. They are ants because they eat up. Ants, automatic negative thoughts actually eat up. It's almost like they are toxic to the brain. So if you see them as ants, challenging them, and one of the ways we can challenge them is some of those questions we asked over there, and also the Philippians 4:8 test. And also somebody has just kindly shared, think. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Um, so those are things that you can use in challenging automatic negative thoughts. So we've shared about 3 of them now. And then leverage your environment. Vision boards. I've written a LinkedIn article, I think we did the last week or so, on vision boards. And it's full of, actually, it's about evidence. What's the science that supports? Vision boards are not just mystical things. They are not just spiritual things either. There's science that's supporting them as well. And travel also helps. For instance, I said that after I went and spoke for JLR, it changed my attitude about funding projects. It helped me to begin to really believe for larger projects, because I'm thinking, do you mean an organization will spend just millions, just throwing away millions? It looks like, I mean, basically, those millions are gone. And there are people who are struggling to fund projects that are a few £1,000s worth. So that makes me feel that there is abundance. The money is somewhere. It's just that it's going to those who believe it's there. So leveraging our environment, what I am traveling can help. Associations can help. I choose associations. Let's be careful about people that we hang out with, because they can also influence our mindsets. Monitoring our self-talk, we talked about that. I said, be careful how you talk to yourself. Your mind is eavesdropping. Your mind is listening in, and your brain is taking notes and developing patterns. I want to say that again because it's important. Mind how you talk to yourself. Mind your self-talk, because your mind is eavesdropping, your brain is taking notes, and your nerve cells are shaping patterns. And that eventually becomes your mindset. So it's important. Be careful what your self-talk is about. Choose your associations, like we said. Visualization is another one. Putting into our minds the thoughts that we really want. Putting into our mind the expectations, the outcomes that we really want. The brain is not able to tell whether it's virtual or real. And there's also quite a lot of science supporting that. I won't go into that today, but there's quite a lot of science supporting it. And there's also scripture supporting it for those who are hot on that and who really want to check it out. Habakkuk 2:3 is one of them. Jacob became a wealthy person, became a millionaire through visualization, or maybe even a billionaire. And God, when God wanted Abraham to believe that he was going to have a son, he asked him to go and count the stars. So there's scriptural basis for visualization there. Mindset. So what are the resources that you can that can be helpful for those who are interested in looking at resources? The New Psychology of Success by Carol Dweck. Carol Dweck is the leading name in mindset research. Winning the Battle of the Mind, very profound book. Joyce Meyer, she talks about her own personal experience of overcoming trauma, childhood trauma, particularly having been abused, sexually abused by her own dad. Switch on Your Brain, Caroline Leaf. Everybody knows that I'm a Caroline Leaf fan. And she's also written another one more recently, Clean Up Your Mental Mess. Both profound books. Carol Dweck, The Power of Believing That You Can Improve, and also The Power of Not Yet. Very profound TED Talks. Those two last ones, The Power of Believing That You Can Improve and The Power of Not Yet, they are TED Talks and they're on YouTube. Drive by Daniel Pink, and Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's about money. There's a series, or I'm sure that a lot of people know that. Maybe not the Gen Zs and the Alphas, but it's their classics on money mindset. So that's the Carol Dweck book. Mindset Shift Resources. There's a victim mentality assessment. If you Google that, there's a victim mentality assessment test actually that people can take. It asks you a number of questions, and your answer will help you to determine whether you actually have a victim mentality or not. Obviously, if there is one, then one needs to do something about it. And then I wrote an article for Keep the Faith magazine in November. And that's the link to that. It's called the Mind Makeover for 2025. And also that's my LinkedIn post on vision boards. And I also wrote a LinkedIn post this morning on mindset shifts. So what are the things that Tripart Care does? We do trauma-informed one-to-one executive coaching for men. I'm particularly keen on supporting men who are middle-aged men, because sometimes a lot of middle-aged men are stuck, but it's difficult to accept that there's a problem. So we also offer workplace mental and well-being consultancy, keynote public speaking. I really enjoy public speaking. I think that's one of the ways to really pass information. And yes, I'll share the link in a minute. And then we do bespoke corporate, charity, faith, mental health awareness training. So if, for instance, in your church, you wanted to deliver mental training to your volunteers, or we can come over and deliver training that will be relevant to you. The YouTube channel, that's been put on the link. I think B or Danny put that up a while back. And so let's be aware of that. And also, like I said, for those who might want to follow us, Facebook, that's my name on Facebook. I don't do Facebook as much these days. I think I do more LinkedIn and Instagram. And those are the details. And very shortly, Tripart Care itself will be having an Instagram group where you can expect some of the clips from this very tips. They will be called Tripart Thoughts and Techniques, or Tripart Thoughts, Tips and Techniques. And it should be really to do with mental well-being, mental and emotional well-being. Good. Thank you for those numbers. I would make sure that you get added to the group. And I think that's about it for this evening. Thank you so much for listening.